how can I take this and use this as a conduit or a vehicle to do so much more? And that's exactly the mission behind Tipped and the heart behind Tipped, and that's what it's grown into. And you know, so it's changed completely from finding a solution for the tipper to actually going, hang on, there's an opportunity here where we can actually change lives.
Welcome to another episode of Boardroom Conversations, the What Prop Business podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest joining us today. Her name is Kimlynn Temple. She's the CEO and founder of Tipped. Tipped is a digital tipping platform that specializes and is pioneering tipping in South Africa electronically. She's also going to unpack her personal story as well as where Tipped is going into the future. Thank you for joining us for this boardroom conversation. I'm your host, Justin Watkins. Just a quick one, before this episode begins, please like, share and subscribe. We're on YouTube and Spotify. Please also follow us on our LinkedIn page to keep up to date with the latest episodes. Kim, firstly, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about your business, Tipped. I'd like to start today's episode with a quote by John Bunyan. And he says, "You have not lived today until you have done something for someone who can never repay you." And I think that quote just encapsulates what you're doing with Tipped and basically how you've started this business that really is seeking to create economic inclusion and improvement of living standards for so many people in a marginalized society. But just as a starting point, behind Tipped is a person, and that's ultimately you. So just walk us through both your personal journey and your business journey leading up to starting Tipped as a business.
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It really is an honor. So thank you. Thanks for your interest in Tipped as well. It means a lot. I think to start off, I recently did a talk and somebody asked me, you know, are you that what if kind of a person? And I think it summed it up so beautifully. I sort of sat back and I thought, yeah, I am. I think I am that what if kind of a person. You know, it's a person, I think, that looks at everyday sort of challenges and goes, well, what if we can make a difference here? You know, what if we can do something else? What if we can change the way things are? And I think I've always had like a passion for innovation and a deep curiosity, I think, about just how we can change everyday experiences and moving with it. You know, my background is in IT, so I was a C++ and Java developer way back in the day, very, very long ago, and then studied UX design, and which is user experience design, which is a fascinating field. Honestly, it's incredible. I mean, it's basically the psychology of design. So it's from, like we were, before we, you know, started chatting cars, it goes into car design, from the feeling of the steering wheel to the sound of the engine to the feeling of when you put your foot down on the accelerator, you know, the sound of the indicator, all those emotions that it brings up in you. So UX design to me was fascinating because it combines, I think, the development side of things with the creativity, you know, with design around that as well. And then, gosh, involved in various different ventures along the way, from teaching at a nursery school to being a kettlebell instructor, and then running my own interior design company as well. So I think creative in a way, but I think all entrepreneurs really are creative. I think, you know, it's the ability to imagine or to see that dream or that goal of where you want to be, and to be able to paint that picture of, you know, in something that doesn't quite exist in the moment. So I think looking back at where I've been and where I am now, I think, you know, you learn along the way. You learn so much in terms of resilience and adaptability. I think grace and compassion for others. Patience. I mean, when you're teaching a classroom of 3-year-olds, you can imagine, you learn a lot of patience. But I think just nurturing people, and I think more than anything, I think living by heart and a lot of compassion for people. I think that really was the foundation and the reason why I founded Tipped. Yeah.
So understanding like customer experience, and obviously your past is understanding like through compassion and through those lenses, it ultimately led you to starting Tipped. And so just give us a bit of an idea for our listeners, what is Tipped? What is it all about? How does it work? Just so people can understand what business we're talking about.
Sure. So Tipped is, in essence, it's a digital tipping and payment solution aimed at any service personnel receiving gratuity. So it's just a cashless way in which to give someone a tip, to show your appreciation, and to just help in some way, right? So I started Tipped 5 years ago. And for me, it was actually my dad and I, we were sitting down the one day and we were just saying, you know, like, for him, he's the type of person that would cash in money at the beginning of the week and have his jar of 5 Rand coins sitting in his car. I'm not that organized at all. I'm the one that's digging in my handbag, looking for change, digging in my purse. I've got 2 children who I love to bits, but those little buggers take every cent that I have in my purse and it's gone. So I find myself, I'm always one without any cash. And I think it's just coming to that point of going, well, I can't look a car guard in the eye any longer and say to them, you know, I'm so sorry I don't have anything while I'm reversing out of a parking lot, you know, or can I get you a Coke, or, you know, next time, and I just thought, you know what, I need to act. Something needs to change it. I need to fix this. And there had been several initiatives that had sort of started up a way and means to send a digital tip across, but nothing that had really gained traction. So obviously, having my IT background, I thought, well, let me look at this. Let me just try this. Let's launch a proof of concept. I literally had 18 car guards across the road from me at a shopping center. Thought, well, I can use the shopping center. I've got a really good network of moms in the area. Myself, I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 6-7 years, and just thought, you know what, like, I just want to try this. Let's just see if this is something that can work and can make a difference somehow. And I think seeing it more so from the tipper's perspective, thinking, you know, well, there's just a gap here. I've identified a gap. There's, as I say, just, you know, having a look and finding and being passionate about innovation and thinking, well, exactly that. What if we change this? And what would that mean? What would it mean for the tipper to send money across digitally and to tip digitally and to have that convenience? And then what would it mean for the tippee? And how would they react to receiving money digitally as opposed to cash in hand? You know, you're changing a whole mindset and mind shift there, very, very much so. So anyway, launched my proof of concept with 18 car guards at this one shopping center. And it was through this pilot and through this proof of concept that I learned so much. I honestly owe Tipped to those 18 car guards, because they became my mentors in the journey. You know, they allowed me to walk in their shoes. They allowed me to see the challenges that they face on a daily basis. And this actually became the genesis of Tipped. This is when, for me, Tipped was born. It wasn't when I first decided to create a solution for the tipper. It was actually going into this and realizing through incredible moments and these light bulb moments that happened during my proof of concept. I mean, within the first 7 days of running Tipped, we saw an increase of 23% in revenue for the car guard, for the parking attendant. And so this 23% then grew to almost 40% through our proof of concept. I mean, 40% increase in revenue for a car guard is massive. It's absolutely huge. On top of that, using and the way we built it, I mean, I partnered with a digital wallet at the time, so really it was just saying, well, each recipient, each car guard got a digital wallet with a corresponding QR code. They wore their QR code on a lanyard and they went out there and people just started tipping. And this is how we increased revenue by almost 40%. And there's a psychological shift in when you are digging for that 2 Rand or that 5 Rand or whatever the case may be that you have in your car. If you're like me, you have nothing. But when you are digging for that, you know, you kind of, to hand over a 10 Rand note or a 5 Rand coin or whatever versus actually tipping digitally, people tip a lot more. Wow. So, you know, when you're tipping digitally, for you to put a value in, the likelihood of you putting in 2 Rand or 5 Rand, you're going to put in 20 Rand or 30 Rand. I mean, we're seeing the average tip now is 30 Rand that's coming through for a car guard, which is incredible, you know. So giving each recipient, each car guard, this digital wallet meant that I could also give this to foreign nationals. I could, whether you had asylum documents, work permits, passport or ID, I can give you, and that's how I started, could give each recipient a digital wallet and then this corresponding QR code. One of the first, and I think it's a story I tell so often, but I think it falls so much in line with Simon Sinek's sort of, you know, you've got to find your core why and why you're doing what you're doing. And it's a story that I tell so often because it became my core why. But the first Zimbabwean that I signed up, his name was David, signed him up and gave him his digital wallet, and he started receiving tips in it and everything. And 3 days later, he was robbed, stabbed horrifically, and they took everything from him. They took his wallet, his cell phone, all the cash that he had made that day, everything. And I went to go check on him the next day because I'd obviously got to know him really, really well through this proof of concept. And he said to me, like, he was so excited, and it was something I couldn't quite understand. And he said to me, Kim, for the first time ever, I've got 300 rands worth of tips sitting in my tipped wallet. They couldn't touch that. They couldn't touch it. It's mine, and that's under my control. And it really made me take a step back and go, hang on a second, like, this is far, far bigger and carries far more purpose and potential and opportunity than what I ever imagined. You know, if you take it, I mean, there's over 1.5 million car guards, registered car guards in South Africa, right? If you can increase their revenue by almost 40%, if you can give them a safe way in which to save and transact their money in and on, I mean, if you could do that to 1.5 million people in this country, that's huge. It's huge, right? I mean, what does that mean to the families that they're supporting? What does it mean to them as an individual? What does it mean to our country and our economy as well? And that's really, for me, as I say, that was the genesis of TIP, because that's when I really started taking a look at this and thinking, well, how can I use a smart but accessible solution like this? That's pretty simple, really. It's not rocket science. How can I take this and use this as a conduit or a vehicle to do so much more? And that's exactly the mission behind Tipped and the heart behind Tipped, and that's what it's grown into. And, you know, so it's changed completely from finding a solution for the tipper to actually going, hang on, there's an opportunity here where we can actually change lives. And really the mission behind Tipped is creating financial sustainability and inclusion for the person behind the tip, for the tippee, and bringing in all these beautiful verticals and adjacencies as to how can we do that. You know, so we're constantly building our ecosystem within our wallet to do that. And then we've taken it one step further, because I think for me it was, you know, well, we've provided almost like a 3-step approach. So we've provided a solution for the tipper. We are now building this beautiful ecosystem for the tippee and all these wonderful things that we can do and bring within it. And I mean, it's bringing in, like, we've already got cash back. We've got bringing in like cross-border remittance, pension plans, provident funds, you know, small investments, savings, cross-border remittance, education discounts. Like, there's all these beautiful things that we can bring into this, you know, even if it's fractionalized and on a very small scale, microloans, for example, you know. There's so much that we can do and we can build within this. And then it's taking it a step further and going, okay, well, we're doing all of this and we're uplifting lives, but how can we actually revolutionize the tipping industry as a whole? So if I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, so the third component being the corporates and the partners that we partner with, and what can we provide there? So, I mean, Tipped, I've been extremely fortunate in its journey, as hard as it has been, but I've been running a pilot with Cecil now for the last year, and which is huge. So that's signing up all the fuel attendants, cashiers, and car wash staff. And basically what we're doing is we're giving each of them a digital wallet with their QR codes that they can obviously receive tips in. But then on top of it, we have reporting, which we're able to give to the corporates that we partner with. So Cecil, as an example, with the consent of the user, of the fuel attendant, I'm able to provide Cecil with complete transparency into what's happening on their forecourt and what's happening in those individual tipped wallets. So that means basically that Cecil have access, and the retailers of the forecourt have access to see what's happening on their forecourt in terms of customer service and satisfaction, which fuel attendants are performing really well, and to use this as an incentive to reward like good customer service really at the end of the day. You know, and that to me is beautiful. That's powerful, because that's insight into things and data that has never been accessible before with cash. You know, obviously when you get tipped in cash, you cannot see what's actually happening on the forecourt or what's happening in that service sector as such. But through this way we can. And then what SouthAfrica said is that what they will do is at the end of the month, they'll actually double the fuel attendant that earns the most in tips. They actually want to double their fuel attendant's revenue that they've generated through tips. So, it's just that creating that whole circular economy of good through this whole thing. So that's really what tipped is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you obviously approached SouthAfrica to onboard all their necessary, like petrol attendants and car guards and car wash people and everything. So if you just have to explain it very simply, so how would that process actually work? Let's say someone's watching it and they're watching this episode, they actually want to implement tipped at their fuel station, at their corporate head office, whatever it may be. What is the process of actually onboarding all those staff?
So what they would do, there's different ways in which we can do this. We can do bulk onboarding for a corporate, or alternatively, an individual can sign up themselves. So they would basically, if we take an individual looking at a customer assistant, a car guard, for example, informal trader, whoever it may be, they would just go to the Play Store. So you don't necessarily have to have a smartphone in order to sign up to tip and receive your tips and whatever. You need access to a smartphone basically to just download the app from the Play Store. It's available in all Play Stores. Register yourself, so it will step you through a registration process. Within that registration process, it should take approximately 5 minutes to register yourself and to actually get your tipped bank account, in essence, your tipped digital wallet, right? So the registration process within that, we FICA approve every single individual. We do a liveness and likeness check. We verify that they are who they are, basically. Once we've gone through that process, we validate that individual, they get their digital wallet, right? They log into their digital wallet and they get their corresponding QR codes. They can display this QR code however they want to. So as I say, you don't necessarily have to have a smartphone. You just have to have access in order to register, to get your QR code and to print it out. Once you've got that QR code printed out, you can just receive tips and keep receiving tips. Anytime that you want to transact or check your balance or anything like that, you would basically just need access to a smartphone. The system has been built that it's completely agnostic. Like, for example, I could use your phone right now and log into my bank account, that sort of thing. So you just log in and log out. Then on the other side of it, as a tipper, I get to a SASL forecourt. I fill up, I want to show my appreciation and I want to give a tip across. I do not need a tipped app in order to do so. For me, that was sort of just trying to make it as frictionless as possible. I don't want to necessarily get somewhere, then realize I have to download an app, pre-fund it, and then and only then can I tip. So basically the way in which you would tip someone is you would open your phone's camera, scan the QR code. It'll give you a whole array of options. So SnapScan, Zapper, EFT, bank card, whatever you want to choose out of that. And then the second QR code that they have is that you can use your banking app. So any banking app that you have on your mobile device, be it FNB, RMB, Standard Bank, any of those have got a scan to pay feature built within it, generally on the home screen. And then you just open scan to pay, scan their QR code and send the tip across. And
so seamless.
It really is. Look, it's not perfect. I'm always developing that process, because for me, the thought is, as quick as it would be, taking me out of the equation because I'm the one that doesn't carry cash, but as quick as it would be to go into your purse or your wallet or whatever the case may be and grab a note or a coin or whatever and hand it over, the process of doing it digitally should take the same amount of time. And that's a difficult one to get to, and our process is by no means perfect. It's something that we're developing all the time, because that user journey, I think going into this, you try and cater for everyone in every situation. So that's why we've kind of put in SnapScan and Zapper and bank card and EFT and all these things, but it actually complicates it. In terms, sometimes you think maybe just giving one option is the simplest. But that's lessons that we're learning along the way.
But I think that variety is important, because obviously you've got all the different types of banks, all the different types of payment platforms, and providing that ability to transact whichever way you please is actually really nice, particularly for the person giving the tip.
Yeah, absolutely. We just want to, I think, take as many steps out of that process that we can. So that's something that we, as I say, we're constantly working on.
I think one of the biggest barriers to this kind of business initially, I think there's been a lot of different businesses that have tried to do this, and I think one of the largest barriers, in my opinion, is the person wanting to give the tip. That there's so many barriers to give the tip that the person just says, this is just a headache, let me just leave it.
100%. I see it all the time. and it's feedback that I get, particularly from, because I've been running pilots in different service sectors now for over almost 3 years, just collecting data, as we develop and whatever. And from our buskers, actually, performing artists, that's the biggest sort of issue that we have and hurdle that we have is that, they're performing. They can't exactly stop their performance to explain, okay, open your banking app here and scan, or open this and then step through. They can't. So but it's good, it's constructive feedback, that they're sort of performing and they see people try and tip, they try once, they try twice, and then they give up, and that's what we need to work around, and that's what we need to solve. So yeah, a lot of it is just, it's learning, but it's taking as much of the friction out of their process that we possibly can. And there's so many different solutions. You can look at NFC devices, basically, where you give each individual an NFC device, and you touch on screen. I think there's pros and cons to all of it, because there's a cost associated to that. Whereas a QR code, it's R5 to print out a QR code. That's why we went with QR codes. But there's risks in that. So, we're constantly trying to work out what is best and how can we move forward. Be one step ahead, but also be, as I say, accessible. Have a solution that is accessible, that anyone can use.
For sure. And I think that leads onto the next question, which is social entrepreneurship. And social entrepreneurship it's a new innovative business venture that influences change. As a social entrepreneur, you would typically have a specific cause that you care about and develop a business model around making a positive impact. So social entrepreneurship is very much aligned with Tipped.
Yep.
Why is social entrepreneurship so important to you in a country like South Africa?
I firmly believe that business should be about more than just profit at the end of the day. I think it should be about creating a tangible value in society. I think, if social entrepreneurship excites me, I think, more than anything, because it combines innovation with purpose and with passion. And I think if you can use that to address pressing societal needs, and if you can use that to create a circular economy of good, as I was speaking about, if you can do that, that's the dream, really, at the end of it. Do something that's constructive, that's useful, that makes a difference, that makes a change. And if you can be profitable in that, well, that's amazing. It's a bonus. But yeah, it's going out there leading, as I say, leading first with heart, leading first with empathy, and trying to solve things. Using fintech, it's incredibly powerful, but using that to actually make a difference.
Sure. Yeah, and I think Tipped plays such a crucial role in the South African context in particular. And I think if you look at, we live in such a marginalized society, particularly in South Africa. So I think this kind of solution offers such an empowerment to those kinds of people. I think we actually live in the most marginalized society in the world. Yeah, there's that famous picture of Alex and Sandton, with the highway running through it, and you just see the disparity between wealth and poverty, and obviously the disparity is just immense. And I think this somehow closes the gap. In a strange way.
Absolutely. It's seeing a large demographic of unseen individuals. If I could use Tipped as a storytelling platform, it's just exposing the person that's behind the tip, giving them dignity back, respecting the person that's giving you that service. If we can do all of that, if we can bridge all those gaps through this, and as I say, it's through such a simple mechanism where those that have can give to those that don't have. And you're just allowing for that to happen. Yeah. You're
just providing a platform for that to take place.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great follow-on onto our next question, where in terms of Tipped as a business, what are you guys currently up to? Where is it going into the future? Obviously, it's very exciting because it's constantly evolving and changing. So where's Tipped kind of going into the future at the moment?
I think currently we're working on just expanding our reach. As I say, we've been running these sort of controlled pilot groups in different service sectors, redeveloping, but now it's about building up our user base. With Cecil, obviously that gives us a massive launching pad. That's 17,000 fuel attendants across South Africa, which is huge for Tipped. It's huge for any startup. I feel I still refer to it as a startup. It's 5 years in, but that alone is a massive opportunity, but it's expanding our reach across different service sectors. It's constantly looking at ways that we can bring in features to create that financial sustainability and inclusion. And then I think on top of it, as I say, so much of it is how can we actually revolutionize the current tipping processes and culture? How can we actually really change that up? Just the fact that we are able to, through this platform, be able to ensure that the tip goes directly to the right individual who's responsible for that service that they've put out there, that it settles in their account immediately, they can transact with it immediately, they don't have to wait 2 days, a week, or until the end of the month. If we can change up things, I think, as I say, in the tipping culture and in the way tips are currently being handled, that's amazing. But I think I envision tip to be bigger than just what it is and where it is right now. I envision it going into Africa, as I say, and that's where we're bringing in the cross-border remittance. And then globally as well, and adapting to the different environments that we take it into. It's obviously different countries are going to have different needs. It may not be as much about upliftment and empowering individuals, but it may just mean we can, as I say, revolutionize, change things up a little bit, be a bit of a disruptor, in a good way, and then, and I mean, it's got an extensive roadmap, and it's super exciting as to what we want to do. I get super frustrated in it because I feel sometimes like I'm this racehorse that's sitting in a stall that's almost been stung by a bee, and I just want to get out, and I have all these wonderful ideas that wake you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're just like, oh, I want to do this. Because you can just see, I can see people benefiting from it, and so I get super frustrated in the time that it takes to get there and the journey, but I have big plans for it, and I can't wait for them to unfold.
And would you say South Africa has a very strong tipping culture?
It does. I think it does. It's when I first started Tipped and I went into this, starting with car guards, I mean, I think they're quite a debatable. It's a debatable industry and issue. I think people either love a car guard or really dislike them. And in a day, I think it can change. If you go to a couple of shopping centers, eventually you're like, I'm done with this. So I get it. And when I went into this, it was difficult because I had a lot of backlash on social media, from people sort of voicing their opinions about car guards, that it's an informal sort of industry and form of employment. But at the end of the day, I think that's what tipping is. Tip or don't tip. It's up to you. You give a tip it's just something that you do out of the goodness of your own heart. And if you feel like you want to, then do it. I do think, though, I think in South Africa, I think it's a healthy tipping culture. Absolutely. I think that's something that surprised me so much in launching Tipped. And I mean, I've had the people that have sort of disagreed with what I'm doing and everything, and have said this is not going to work and it's not a good idea. But at the same time, I've had more people come forward and go, you know what, it's just so awesome being able to, finally there's a solution, finally there's a way that I can still give where I feel like my hands aren't tired because I don't carry cash. And that's what you want at the end of the day.
Wow, it's actually an incredible story. It truly is. And I do believe South Africa does have a very strong tipping culture. I know, even if you look at naturally, you tip on a bill. When you go to a restaurant, in a lot of countries overseas, the tip is actually built into the price. It's not actually, you don't add gratuity over and above that.
And you don't actually have a choice.
So it's almost like our hearts are almost eager to be like, okay, maybe should we give a tip? Should we not give a tip? So I think our culture does lend itself to this type of business in a really profound way.
I think so, absolutely. And I think, as I say, I think there's a lot of people out there that do want to support, as I say, that demographic of individuals that just go unseen, that need the help, that just, I think, need to be treated fairly. And there's a lot of people that see that and follow that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so let's assume you're walking along the streets of Cape Town and a young person runs up to you and says, Kim, I'd love to start a business in South Africa. What advice would you give to that person?
run, like keep running, run away from it. No, I'm kidding. I think it's hard. It's a hard journey. It's a roller coaster of emotions. But I think the best and biggest advice I can give is to start with a problem. Like identify a problem rather than just finding an idea or coming up with an idea. Actually just start with a problem. And it doesn't have to be in, changing lives or uplifting people. It can be something in manufacturing and engineering. But start with a problem and grow from there, because I believe that when you start that way, it gives birth to a passion and a purpose. And that passion and purpose is what keeps fueling you and keeps you going through the hardship and through that insane roller coaster that it is. So I think key phrases that I think I would highlight the most is in that being adaptable, being able to go with the flow, because you're going to constantly be in flux. I think when you go into it, the way you think it's going to work is not the way it's going to work. The time in which you think it's going to work out in is not the time that it's going. At the end of the day, it's all in His time. Yeah. And it's a hard lesson that I've had to learn. As I say, I carry frustrations because I want it yesterday, not even now. Like I want all these things to be real and tangible and in the hands of those. But your timing is not going to be the timing that it works out to be. Yeah. I think another key point would be leverage technology. AI and apps and tools that are out there at the moment are incredibly powerful. Use them, fall back on them, to use them. There's days, for example, where I can write like a novelist, and days where I hit a brick wall and I can't string two words together, and the words fail me. And so having tools where they can step in and help you in times where you're failing a little bit, or just perhaps don't even have the brain capacity in that day to do it. I think that's a big one. I think one of the most important for me would be your networks. Grow your networks, because, gosh, if that's something that I've learned, and I think I can speak to that forever, but for me, the value of your business strongly equates to the strength of your network. If your network is strong, if your community behind you is strong, that's power within itself. The saying of it's not what you know, but it's who you know is so incredibly true. And honestly, it is through God's grace. But I have met individuals in this journey who have opened doors that I never thought would be possible. Sure. I've looked up so many times and I've just thought, how did this become possible? How am I speaking to this individual? How is this person who I'm sitting opposite with? I met James Force this week, and I sat opposite him and started explaining Tipped, and he immediately caught onto the vision, and that alone is a gift in itself. And I think expanding your network, nurturing your network is so vital in any process. In life in general, but in that entrepreneurship journey, it's so important. But I think one of the things that we have to learn is when approaching somebody that you want to bring into your network or into your community, it's approach them with the idea of what value can I bring to that individual before thinking about, well, what can they do for me? What value can they bring to me? So it's looking at it and going, what can I bring to them, and learn a bit about that individual, without stalking them obviously on Facebook, but learn about the individual and find some common ground and find something where, as I say, you can just bring something to their lives, so that it's equal and it's fair. And then I think the last point I'd say more than anything is just to stay resilient, to stay curious, as I say, to continuously question that what if, or how can I, or have those questions backed by that perseverance and that persistence. Because as I say, it's a roller coaster and it's tough, but it's so incredibly rewarding. If I look at some of the stories that have come out of Tipped, one of the fuel attendants, I was chatting to him the other day, and he's got over 4,000 rands worth of tips in his Tipped wallet, and and I look at that and I just think wow, that is worth every single time I've sat there with my head in my hands and been in tears because I don't know if I can actually do this. And then you hear that and it makes you power on.
Yeah, it reminds you of why you're doing it and the purpose behind it and the impact that you're actually having on people around you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
And obviously in this business journey, as much as it is a roller coaster and it's up and down, do you have any like favorite business stories or business quotes that just really, that you can bring to remembrance, not on necessarily the daily basis, but just weekly or monthly, that you kind of revisit all the time just to remind you of the journey that you're on?
I think there are two that I kind of hold close to heart. But as I say, I think the people the tippies that I work with, they inspire me more than anything. They are the ones, their stories that come out of this, the smiles that come out of this, the difference that I can see, that actually motivates me more than any quote or saying or, any person out there who's sort of declared some sort of amazing phrase around entrepreneurship. That honestly, that is what inspires me on a daily basis, and those stories are the things that I pull up, especially when I'm needing a little bit of help, I think, in terms of continuing and battling through things and whatever. But I think the two, and a very well known, is those that are crazy enough to think they can change the world, or the ones that do. I may have got it a bit wrong, but that in essence, I think you've got to have a slight bit of crazy to be an entrepreneur, I think. But I think it's true, because I think if you have your sights set on wanting to make a difference, and actually changing the world, and you just keep pushing through and keep pushing through, with faith right behind you, you'll get there. And then the other is, it's Babe Ruth actually, and I could also be getting it wrong, but it's basically that it's really hard to beat a person who never gives up. Bob Skinstead actually recently posted that on LinkedIn, and I read it and I thought, I love that so much, because I've challenged myself in Tipped. I've got so many big driving forces just personally behind why I'm doing what I'm doing, and so I've challenged myself that I will never ever give up on it, come hell or high water. I will not give up on this, because as I say, I have those images of just those smiling faces of people where you've made a little difference in their day, and that alone, that's just made me promise myself that as many times as you get knocked down, you just stand up again and you keep doing it.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, it truly is an inspiring story, and I'd like to just give you the opportunity to leave. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I think I'd like to encourage everyone, I think, to just embrace change. I think that's a hard thing in life, no matter what that is, but change, and to lead by empathy. I think more than anything, just be kind. That's really what it is. I think that's the heart of Tipped. It's definitely my heart, is that I just be kind, be good, put goodness out there, and I think more than anything, and it's a lesson that I have to teach myself, I think as entrepreneurs, we're so hard on ourselves. We are our biggest critics. That fear of failure is constantly sitting there, and it's something that I've had to learn on myself, is just before being kind to anyone, be kind to yourself. And I know it sounds silly, but it honestly is, because if you can resonate that within you, it just kind of flows out as these ripples of good, and just, as I say, just create that circular economy of good. And it could be something so small, just a small random act of kindness, whatever that is. It could just be a compliment, a lending hand. It doesn't have to be a monetary thing or a tip even. It just lead your day with a bit of empathy for yourself and for everyone around you.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Kim, I really enjoyed our time together, and I really loved hearing about Tipped and understanding the business a little bit more. And I'd like to just finish with the little quote that you have on your LinkedIn page that says, "Change for change."
Yeah.
And I think it's just a lovely way to finish it off. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and just give you the platform also just to speak about this incredible business that you've started. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Honestly, thank you for shining the light on Tipped. It means so much. So I appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.